What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Points Per podcast. Thank you for joining us as always. Tonight, we're getting into 6 players that you cannot leave your drafts without, our My Guys episode, if you will. I'm really excited to get into it. Let me bring my co-host up on the screen here. Will is with me tonight. How you feeling, and are you excited to talk about your favorite players in this year's draft cycle?
I'm feeling great. I'm extremely excited to talk about our players in this cycle. And we know who's not the Cowboys player in this cycle, Mr. Micah Parsons. He got shipped out today. So it's been an exciting day to say the least. Great day to talk some football for
Yeah,
sure.
man. NFL is turning into the NBA. These blockbusters are flying left and right. You love to see it. You absolutely love to see it. But without further ado, let's get right into this thing, man. I'm going to let you start us out. Who is your number one player on your must draft list?
Absolutely. The guy I think you have to leave drafts with is Mr. Kenneth Walker, K9 of the Seattle Seahawks. As we can see right now, he's going as the RB17. And just to talk about him, last year, he's coming off a disappointing season, to say the least. He averaged about, I think, 3.7 yards per carry. And this was, and obviously he got hurt. So he only played, I think, 11 games out of 17 last year. So there were some injury troubles for Kenneth Walker as well. So people are a little bit turned off from him. But this was still in an offense where K9 had the fourth highest target share amongst running backs with 13.8%. And he had the fifth highest route participation amongst running backs at 51.8%. And he still finished the RB12 in points per game last year. Now, Kenneth Walker is getting a huge upgrade in schemes with Saints former offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, who's going to be calling plays over in Seattle now. With that being said, Kubiak comes from the Shanahan coaching tree, and that's one of the most running back friendly coaching trees in the NFL and league history. And while there's concerns about Seattle's offensive line, the team invested a first in an offensive lineman. Charlie Cross obviously was an offensive lineman as well. And I think with the upgrade in scheme, it just wouldn't be shocking to just see an overall improvement in this group as well, just across the line. And with that being said, also with the quarterback transition for this team, because they're losing Geno Smith and gaining Sam Darnold as a starter, Sam Darnold is also very familiar with those Shanahan type systems as well, having come from San Francisco and coming from the Vikings last year with Kevin O'Connell, both of which obviously one actual Shanahan and Kevin O'Connell coming from that Shanahan tree as well. It just looks like he doesn't really have too much adjusting he has to do, so you don't really have to worry about, quarterback fit with this system as well. So things should flow extremely well, and he should be able to hit the ground running. So I would prioritize the scheme fit here with Kenneth Walker as opposed to, looking at health or anything like that. Obviously, we can't predict injuries. This could be a season where Kenneth Walker plays all 17 games. But at the very least, I think with the price that Kenneth Walker is going for, I think that at the very least, injuries kind of baked into his ADP. So at the very least, you could be getting a guy who has a floor of being an RB2, but also has the ceiling of being an RB1 because this offense very much does fit the style of runner that Kenneth Walker is. So I'm all in on Kenneth Walker this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I kind of wanted to put him on my list as well. I started to get a little hesitant with just the foot issues that he's already having, but he seems to be back and healthy. He's participating with the team again. But yeah, just to add on to what you said, I think the Clint Kubiak is the perfect fit for Kenneth Walker in that outside zone scheme. He's shown so far throughout his career to be significantly more efficient in outside zone running concepts than he is with any other running scheme. He's consistently been one of the most evasive runners and among the top of the league leaders in terms of missed tackles forced year over year. Um, and it seems like, based on the preseason action that we've gotten so far, that the offensive line has much more cohesion. It's in a much better state than it has been in the past years, where it's literally been bottom of the barrel, like one of the last groups in the league. And so, if he can use that evasive ability and put those missed tackles forced into the second level versus having to do that behind the line of scrimmage every time, he's really going to be able to show off his home run ability. And I genuinely think that if he's healthy for all 17 games, it's nearly a lock that he's an RB1. It's really just the health that's kind of holding him back from being up in that upper echelon status.
Absolutely agree. I think Kenneth Walker's in this offense with what they've shown in the preseason, he's bound to just run amok this season.
Absolutely. And we've talked about like whether we want to handcuff our own running backs or not. I think Zach Charbonnet offers enough standalone value that drafting him along with Kenneth Walker is probably worth it.
Yeah, I think that's something you probably should aim to do with Kenneth Walker and your team for sure.
Yeah.
So, who do you have for your first guy?
I don't think this is going to be any surprise. Definitely not to you. And if our audience has been keeping track of any of our most recent videos, this is an easy one. This is Travis Hunter. It's my boy. we're we're gonna get into it. I feel like most of the community is either all in or all out on Travis Hunter. There's not too much of a middle ground, and so I don't want to spend too much time catering to the people that already kind of agree with us. I'm going to spend time trying to address the things that the haters have against Travis Hunter. Um, so one of the main things that I've seen is that he's really only hyped up because he plays both ways. He's not actually elite on either side of the ball. I think that's totally incorrect. Just based on awards won, he won the Bednarik and the Biletnikoff last year in college football, the first college football player ever to do that. Those awards being for the best defensive player in college and the best receiver in college, not even to mention the Heisman, the best overall player in college. If we're talking statistically and analytically, PFF gave him an offensive grade of 86.2, which was fifth amongst all college wide receivers, ahead of the likes of Jeremiah Smith, Tet McMillan, and Emeka Egbuka. So I think that's pretty elite, in my opinion. On defense, his PFF coverage grade was a 91.1, which was second among cornerbacks and tied with Jahdae Barron. Hunter was able to accomplish that with fewer total coverage snaps and also garnered significantly fewer targets per coverage snap than Barron, which that's not a volume thing. That's a skill thing. People don't want to throw to his side of the field. But even still, he produced the same amount of counting stats with 8 forced incompletions, 7 pass breakups, and 4 interceptions. I just think if he was only a wide receiver and not a cornerback, he would still be the best wide receiver in the class and probably be drafted top 5. And if he was only a DB, he'd be considered the best in the class and still be drafted top 10 or top 15. So I don't think there's any question about his ability. People will also argue, he's a better defensive back and he's not going to play enough snaps on offense. From just like a logical reasoning standpoint, in terms of the amount of draft capital used on him, the amount of value that the team gave up in the trade to get there, and then also just the positional value difference that the NFL has shown us between wide receivers and DBs, it would be unjustifiable for the focus for him to just be on defense. They traded 2 firsts and a second, essentially, to go up to 2 to get him. And talking about contracts, like the top cornerback contract in the NFL right now is worth 25% less than the top wide receiver contract. So the NFL is clearly telling us that wide receivers are significantly more valuable. So why would you use the number 2 pick on a cornerback? That's just not what's going to happen. And then, so that's just kind of proliferating without any information from the team. We have information from the team, from the coaching staff and the front office about what they want out of Travis Hunter. Every quote, everything we've seen, offense has been the first priority. The most notable quote that we've gotten so far is the one from Liam Cohen on the Dan Patrick Show. I'm paraphrasing this, it's not exact, but basically he said they want Hunter to play about 80% of the snaps on offense, and then they'll see after that if he can get kind of close to matching it on defense. And that's been parroted and repeated by multiple different sources and different people on the team. It's always offense first, and then we'll see what he can do on defense after that. So I'm really not worried about what he's going to provide to the offense on that side of the ball. And then if we want to talk about, 80% not being enough, even if he's not getting the typical wide receiver 1 type snap rate of 90+%, Cohen's going to be really strategic with when he takes him off the field. It's going to be for run plays. It's going to be plays that are designed to go to Brian Thomas Jr. or potentially screens to the running back, stuff like that, where he wouldn't have been getting a touch anyway. And so even on fewer snaps than a typical full-time receiver, he's going to get typical full-time target share, in my opinion. And then the last thing to note on that point is the contingent upside. If BTJ gets hurt, he is 100% on offense. I guarantee you he's playing every snap on offense, and he's going to be the entire focus of the passing game. So that's just another point in his favor in terms of upside. Another argument that people like to come at us with is he's the wide receiver 2 on his team. BTJ was so good last year, even if he does play primarily on offense, he's not going to see enough targets to be good for fantasy. I think that's entirely the wrong way to think about it. I agree that BTJ is awesome. I think he's fantastic. If you go back in our videos so far that we've put out, I've been raving about him. But Liam Cohen has shown that he can support multiple high-end fantasy receivers in every stop that he's been in so far, most recently with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Last year, Godwin only played in 7 games, but he was the wide receiver 2 in half PPR points per game, and Evans finished as the wide receiver 9. So we're talking about 2 top 10 finishes. Um, Based on preseason usage, we've seen both Hunter and BT rotate snaps in the slot, but with a slight lean towards Hunter, who saw 62% of them. That slot role in a Cohen offense is a highly coveted one. Godwin last year, like I said, was the wide receiver 2 in points per game, playing at a 60% slot snap rate. Uh, and he was also leading the NFL in points coming off of design targets prior to getting injured. Um, and this dates back even to Cooper Kupp in 2022 and Wan'Dale Robinson when Liam Cohen was coaching at Kentucky. These guys put up monster numbers in that slot role. Um, I expect Hunter and BT to combine for close to, if not more than 50% of the total target share in that offense. That's going to be plenty for both of them to produce like wide receiver ones. Their defense is also projected to be the worst unit in the NFL. So game scripts are going to favor the pass. Just another point in that favor. And then last thing, I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying this is what I'm predicting, but I truly do think that there's like a 20 to 25% chance that Travis Hunter's just better than BTJ this year. That might sound crazy. I love BTJ. I think he's incredible, but I think there's just a chance that like Travis Hunter is truly transcendent. And so if that's even within the range of outcomes, it's something you have to consider. And it's a possibility in my opinion. And then kind of the last thing to address that I think is maybe one of the only viable arguments here is people argue he's going to get hurt. He can't possibly play all these snaps on both sides of the ball and stay healthy. I don't necessarily agree that you should be fading him based on that, but I can understand that argument. But as a counterpoint to that, even while playing an astronomical 2,625 snaps in his 2 years at Colorado, he only missed 4 games. And it was due to a freak injury in 2023 where he lacerated his liver. He played every game in 2024 and never missed time due to injuries that you would associate with like overwork. So like hamstring, quad, calf, groin, any lower body soft tissue injury. He never sustained any of those throughout the past 2 years in college. So I don't know. I understand that he's unique. I understand that he's different, and we've never seen anybody in the NFL do this before, but we've seen him do it for the past 2 years in college. He's clearly special. He's in a fantastic situation in Jacksonville. I just feel like we should have some fun, live a little, and be on the right side of history. Just draft Travis Hunter, man.
No, I 100% agree. I think as time has gone along, all the hate and stuff that I've seen, because I think when the draft process was first happening, I was more on the hate side of things. As
Okay.
time has gone along, I've definitely been swayed more to the other side, especially when I've just seen sort of the ridiculous arguments people have come up with for as to why Travis Hunter all of a sudden doesn't know how to play football. Like even when it comes to showing early rookie mini camp clips of him running routes and saying he doesn't know how to run routes anymore, or he doesn't
That's
know how to run them.
that's
Like,
the that's the Jamar Chase can't catch footballs in preseason. Like it's the same thing.
yeah, it's ridiculous, and I think that's what people have to do whenever they have a guy that literally, like you said, they can't understand. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we can't understand a guy like Travis Hunter because we've never seen a guy like Travis Hunter. This is the first season we're ever going to see something like this. But like you were saying, with him being in that slot role in the Liam Cohen offense, Liam Cohen made Jalen McMillan look like a really good wide receiver last year in fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think he can't do that with Travis Hunter, who is a generational talent, I think, like Eric said, you're just on the wrong side of history and you're just being hyperbolic, because I think we're in for a big season and honestly just a big career from Travis Hunter. So, like Eric said, I'm excited for just what it is going forward. And yeah, I think we're going to have a little bit of fun with this one.
I love it. I can't wait. All right, let's move on to your number 2 player, which I find very interesting. This is kind of a recent development, and I'm very on board with it. We're talking sleepers here. Who you got for us?
This is a guy who I am considering at this point in, the process to be this year's Braylon Allen. We're looking at Ollie Gordon Jr. of the Miami Dolphins. So we're looking at the situation itself. Obviously, he's there with the Miami Dolphins. Devon Achane is dealing with a calf injury, and they're saying he's going to be back by week 1. but it's still at least a little bit up in the air. He hasn't had any setbacks, so I'm expecting him to be out there. But even with him out there, Jalen Wright is injured. And as far as we know, he has to have surgery and he's not going to be back until September at the earliest, is what they've told us. They said he could be back by September at the earliest. So with that being said, Ollie Gordon is very much primed to at the very least be the RB2 in this offense. And that's an offense that we saw Raheem Mostert score 21 touchdowns in 2023 as like sort of that dual running back role with Devon HN, which I feel like they've been trying to get back to, and they couldn't quite do it last year because Raheem Mostert was dealing with his health, and obviously he's getting older. Jalen Wright never really found his footing last year. And when it comes to the two in the preseason as well, Jalen Wright has not performed as well as Ollie Gordon has. And, the limited opportunity he had before he got hurt, Ollie Gordon did look like the better of the two. And even when we're going back to 2023, Ollie Gordon was one of, if not the best running back in college football at Oklahoma State. Just to read off some stats, 1,732 rushing yards and 21 touchdowns. He won the Doc Walker Award, finishes an All-American and Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. I feel like if he had declared that year, he could have been a potential first-round pick. But obviously, there was a decline in production this past year and some character concerns going into this year. They dropped his stocks a little bit, and he went later in the draft. So honestly, I have a hard time ignoring that past super boom of production. Same like I did with Braylon Allen coming into last year's process. I just kind of felt like he was one too young, and we had seen too much from him at that point for him to be a complete zero at the next level. And I feel like we're seeing that same exact thing with Ollie Gordon. He's just a prototypical build. He could easily be the bruiser and sort of goal line option for this Dolphins offense to complement Devon Achane. And just another funny stat that I found overall, Ollie Gordon joins Ashton Genty and Cam Scatabo as one of three running backs to register a season with 2,000 plus total yards and 20 plus rushing touchdowns in one of the last two seasons. So a little bit of Cam Scatabo hype thrown in there, but also to show he's up there with the likes of Ashton Genty in terms of, college production. Somebody who we're considering, to be a generational prospect. I don't think Ollie Gordon is Ashton Genty, but just something to get excited about. And even to Gordon's credit, he performed well enough this preseason to warrant an RB2 consideration even before the injuries happened to Jalen Wright. So I think that with him being the late round dart throw that he is, but the huge upside that he could provide later, I just feel like he's somebody that you should take that swing on if you have the opportunity to late in drafts.
Yeah, I love this take. It's not somebody that I considered, but I absolutely understand why you put him on here. It I don't necessarily expect this offense to return to their 2023 form,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't imagine that Mike McDaniel, one of the best offensive minds and especially one of the best run game minds in the NFL, won't be able to figure something out. I know that their personnel on the offensive line is looking kind of bleak right now, but like it's got to be better than it was last year. And some of that was personnel based, like you said. They wanted to have another running back involved, another guy that was better in between the tackles, or at least could kind of take that bruiser role that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to subject Devon Achane to, and Ollie Gordon is a perfect fit for that. I also want to add on to what you were mentioning about his decline from 2023 to 2024. It's still kind of shady in a gray area, but he was clearly injured. I've heard rumblings about a knee injury that he suffered early on in the season that heavily hampered him, and he played through it anyway. But you're absolutely right. Like his 2023 season was incredible. I think he probably would have been a first round, if not early second round pick had he come out. And I think he's rounding back into form. He looks a lot healthier now. So we could be getting a huge value. The Dolphins could have gotten a huge value. And in the 15th round, like the end of the 15th round of drafts, the opportunity cost is zero. He's basically free. You might as well take an upside swing.
Absolutely.
So let's get to my guy here. I'm going to add him to the screen. We're talking about George Pickens. I don't think this one is much of a surprise either. If y'all watched our last video on fantasy-friendly environments, I highlighted the Jaguars and the Cowboys. And so I'll get into some of the same stats that I talked about there. But first off, I just think that George Pickens is probably a better football player than most people give him credit for. After his rookie season, I was down on him too. But I think the past two seasons, he's really proven himself. He's been low-key really efficient, and that just hasn't translated well to fantasy production due to poor offensive environment and really, really bad quarterback play. Over those past 2 years, like I mentioned, he's been hovering right around 2.2 yards per route run. Anything over 2 is quite good. He's also been inside the top 15 in yards per team pass attempt over those last 2 years. Last year specifically, he was ranked 6th in air yard share and 18th in expected points per game. But due to, like I mentioned, with quarterback play, 71st ranked catchable target rate, he just couldn't convert those into actual fantasy production. So I think the improvement in offensive environment is going to be twofold for him. One, I think it's going to actually boost his efficiency numbers that I just talked about because that catchable target rate should see a significant boost. And two, I don't think the market has fully priced in how many more routes he's going to run this year and how much more volume he's going to see. It's going to be dramatic. Like, for example, as to the kind of jump that I could see him take, everybody thought Jerry Jeudy got so much better last season. They thought he just became what people thought he was as a prospect. And maybe he did improve a little bit. Maybe that's true. But the biggest factor in why he became a relevant fantasy producer was routes. He ran the most routes in the entire NFL last year with 714. That's 42 per game. That alone took him, like I said, from irrelevant to a very impactful fantasy asset. Last year, Pickens only ran 31 routes per game. And that doesn't even tell like the whole story because it's worse than even that number suggests. Justin Fields was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL at turning dropbacks into non-targeted plays. About 25% of Fields' dropbacks turned into sacks, scrambles, or throwaways where no receiver received the target. So Pickens is going to get to go from a Steelers offense that was already very low pass volume and he was dealing with bottom of the barrel quarterback play. Now he gets to go to Dallas where they're going to be very high pass volume with an accurate pocket passing quarterback that does turn those dropbacks into targets. So I think there's a very real chance that Pickens runs like 120 more routes this year. And that would vault him into the top 5 in terms of routes run per game with guys like CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase. And again, harkening back to that video with the fantasy-friendly environments, I compared the Cowboys to last year's Bengals. And so I bring up Jamar Chase here for a reason. In terms of that comparison, both of these guys have accurate pocket passing distributors at quarterback that we've seen sustain multiple high-end fantasy receivers. The Cowboys actually have a significantly worse run game than the Bengals did, and so they won't be able to lean on that. That's going to mean even more reliance on the pass. They both have elite wide receiver rooms in terms of talent, in my opinion, and I think that's probably hard to argue. They both have coaches that are going to be willing to lean high or into high PROE environments, pass rate over expectation. The reason that Brian Schottenheimer, the current head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, got fired from his last stint in Seattle is because Pete Carroll told him he wanted to pass too much. Those seasons under Schottenheimer, Russell Wilson had the best years of his career as a passer. And then another thing, both of these teams have terrible defenses. Even before the Micah Parsons trade that we just talked about at the top, the Cowboys were projected to be a bottom 10 defense, but without one of the most premier pass rushers in the entire NFL, there's no way that they don't fall to at least bottom 5. Like, it's going to be really, really bad. So game scripts are absolutely going to necessitate having to pass the ball a ton. And so just to kind of finish off the comparison, I don't see a ton of difference between George Pickens and T. Higgins, really as players or fantasy producers. But Higgins gets drafted at the 2-3 turn, while Pickens falls all the way to the 5th. So I just feel like he's going to be a tremendous value this year, and I don't see why you wouldn't take him any chance you get.
I absolutely agree. I think the change of environment is going to be huge for George Pickens. It even feels like mentality wise, just from the clips and stuff we've seen of him at training camp, he just seems like he's happier out there. And I think he knows that his role is just going to be way bigger than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And just with the opportunity he's going to get, just with how much he provides opposite of CeeDee Lamb, like, I don't think people realize how much he's really going to be able to run rampant, especially in single coverage. Now that their teams are going to have to focus on him and CeeDee Lamb at the same time, that's not going to be good for opposing defenses at all. That's going to scramble a lot of things, especially with George Pickens and what he provides. If he is that single coverage guy, there's a lot of head tops out there in danger for sure.
Bring it out.
Yeah.
It's going down.
A lot of head tops in danger.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, let's get to your last must draft player. Who's that going to be?
All right, so guys, this one is a must draft. It's a little gross, but stay with me. We're going Mr. Michael Pittman Jr., who's somebody that I feel like is extremely, extremely underrated at this point. So we're taking a look at the numbers up here. Obviously, nasty. Finished as the wide receiver 52 last year. He's projected as the wide receiver 49 this year. And when we're looking at the stats last year, he was even just like the wide receiver 44 in points per game. So it's not even like I can make up for it and say, oh, when he did play, he was amazing. He played every game last year. He was out there. It just wasn't pretty. Now, there needs to be some context added to this performance. Obviously, we found out Michael Pittman had been dealing with a lower back stress fracture that he had been dealing with since training camp. They discovered it, I think, against the Bears, and he decided the team put him on IR at first, but then he decided he would just play through the season with it. And as a result of that, a lot of his stats took a nosedive. Stuff like yards after catch, I think when you compare it to the year prior, it was halved. It took a complete nosedive. And I think things like, that back injury definitely helped that. I think that helped contribute to, that taking a nosedive. Obviously, he's not going to be as explosive. He's not going to be able to fight through as much contact as someone without a broken back. You know what I mean? So I think things like that could help bring things down. Anthony Richardson last year in the 11 games he played was throwing at a 47.7% clip. And even with Joe Flacco mixed in there, because obviously it was a bit of a carousel once Anthony Richardson was out of there, I think it was 69.7% of Michael Pittman's 111 targets were deemed catchable.
Oh
And
man.
out of those 77 deemed catchable passes, he caught 69 of them. So he was still able to catch. It's just he wasn't able to do much with it after the fact. Now, when you're looking at the fracture that he had, a lot of people are nervous. Maybe this is something that'll linger into this season. Back injuries are known to flare up. But with this being more of a bone issue and it getting the chance to heal in the offseason and him not having to have surgery, it's looking like this isn't something that's going to nag him into this season at all. And also we had a change at the pass thrower back there. Anthony Richardson was benched, and we bring in Daniel Jones. And say what you want to say about Daniel Jones. It's going to be gross out there, obviously. But if there's one thing Daniel Jones can do, it's feed his top guys. And he can also throw the ball and complete passes at over 60%. So we're looking at a pretty big improvement already in the quarterback situation from AR to a Daniel Jones. And with Pittman only entering year 28, it feels like he's one of those guys. You would think Michael Pittman's like 31 years old with the way that people are kind of selling them and saying he's garbage and he's washed and leave him to the side. But he's 27 entering year 28. And I think he's still got plenty of juice left, especially when like the year prior he had 156 targets. He's a guy who this organization fully trusts. And I think they're going to show that now that he's fully healthy.
Yeah. So I didn't want to set you up for failure by introducing this player as somebody that I didn't believe in. I wanted you to sell me on it, and I think you did a pretty good job, honestly. I was skeptical. I, I still don't know that I'm gonna like target him heavily, but a lot of what you said makes sense. It's not that I didn't remember the back injury, but I don't think I factored that in enough. Watching the film last year, he was clearly not even close to the same player with that injury. He wasn't separating the same way. You mentioned the yards after catch, um, and I do hate Daniel Jones, but based on the numbers, the completion percentage is significantly improved. And he's a low ADOT guy, and Michael Pittman Jr. does kind of thrive in that short to intermediate range where I think Daniel Jones is at his best, whatever his best is.
It's gross. It's
It
definitely
is
gross.
gross.
But
It is gross.
I think at the end of the day, with the way he's being priced as like the wide receiver 49, he's gonna finish way above that. He's never finished outside of the wide receiver 22 besides last season.
Is that true?
Yeah.
That high?
Yeah. So it's like
Okay.
I don't think things are gonna take a complete nosedive like that in a year where he's coming back fully healthy with a guy who can
That's
complete the passes.
That's fair. The only other pushback I would give you is just the amount of mouths to feed in that offense. Now, especially that they bring in Tyler Warren, if Josh Downs can stay healthy, AD Mitchell had a really good offseason.
That's
Are
fair.
you worried at all about like what his wide receiver one target share is going to look like?
I was more worried about like AD Mitchell factoring in when it was guys like AR because I feel like he is one of those guys you can take those shots downfield, and he's one of those like Alec Pierce types. Like I feel like Alec
Right.
Pierce isn't going to eat much into Michael Pittman's volume as opposed to like a Josh Downs. But I feel like in this situation, it's less of a target competition and more of just like a target funnel because he's only going to be completing passes within that really short range. So it's
Yeah.
really just going to be going like we got that carousel of three guys who the ball could be going to any given pass. I feel like that's how we should be more looking at it.
Yeah. And that's fair, especially like you said, at these prices of nearly wide receiver 50. It's hard to pass that up. So I like it.
Hell yeah. And who are we rounding this off with?
The last one that I have to bring to the stage here is going to be Colston Loveland, tight end for the Chicago Bears. Another rookie. Two out of my three are rookies. I know. I get a little ahead of myself sometimes, but I'm excited for a lot of this class, and I'll tell you why. So Colston Loveland, very interesting profile. His peripherals and like his market share and efficiency stats were fantastic coming out of Michigan, but his box score stuff was actually pretty bad. I think that's mostly due to the fact that Michigan was incredibly run heavy just as a football team in general in his first 2 years, averaging just over 200 passing yards a game. And then this past season, Jim Harbaugh left, JJ McCarthy left, everybody that was good left. They had terrible quarterback play. It was a really bad team. They were playing against, I think, the hardest schedule in college football, and it just all went to crap. Like it was really bad. They barely averaged over 100 passing yards a game. It's impossible to have good counting stats when that's the type of volume and yards that are going out there. So I'm going to focus more on his like analytical and efficiency profile here to kind of give you the positives. Freshman year, he was behind two NFL tight ends in Luke Schoonmaker and Eric All. But then in his sophomore year, he was able to break out. Even with senior tight end AJ Barner transferring to Michigan, he still produced over him and was competing against other NFL players as well, like Roman Wilson, who he just barely fell behind in terms of the team lead in receiving for what was that national championship Michigan team that year. And then in his junior year, I mentioned team was terrible. It couldn't have been worse in terms of the passing situation, but he was still able to put up an all-time great season from a market share perspective. He had a 34.7% yardage market share, the most of any power conference tight end in the last 15 years. That number actually includes 3 games that he missed, which seems impossible that like you could include that and still have that stat be true. If you exclude those games, that goes up to 39.2%, which would have been the second best of any power conference tight end in the last 45 years. We got to go back to like Vietnam to the last time this was done, bro. It's crazy. And to give even more perspective to those numbers, in the games that Loveland missed, Michigan averaged 56 passing yards a game. In the games that he played, that number went up to 151. Legit 3 times more passing yards when he was on the field. He was the whole offense. Like that, there was nothing else. It was just Colston Loveland. Um, from an efficiency perspective, only Brock Bowers in 2023 and Tyler Warren in 2024 posted higher yards per route run numbers than Loveland, and he posted the highest targets per route run rate of any power conference player since 2016. The only player above him, Drake London, in 2021. So, in terms of efficiency, peripheral numbers, it was through the roof. He couldn't have been much better than he was. On film, I feel like he moves like a wide receiver. He's a very capable blocker, so he's going to avoid that mold of like Mike Gesicki, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid. He's capable enough blocker to stay on the field and be an inline guy, but can also be split out wide when the team feels it necessary. He might not be as physical and dynamic after the catch as Tyler Warren, but I think he's a much better route runner and separator. And one of my pre-draft comps for him was actually Sam Laporta, which is funny because now he ends up in a Ben Johnson-led offense that just 2 years ago turned rookie Sam Laporta into the tight end one that year. So I just think he's really set up in a place to succeed. I think the draft capital investment suggests that he's going to be involved early and often. He was the 10th overall pick, the first tight end off the board. That's a super high investment to make for a tight end. In terms of the target competition that he has to deal with, I think that there are, a lot of names there, but the other receivers on that team were very uninspiring last year. It was a terrible situation. Shane Waldron was not setting people up to succeed. I fully acknowledge that. But at least some of the blame has to go towards the players that were part of it. We saw terrible effort and body language issues from DJ Moore last year, literally walked off the field mid-play at one point, and that's just like the exact opposite of the type of culture that Ben Johnson is trying to cultivate there. Roma Dunze, really disappointing both analytically and, in my opinion, a little bit on film. I'm not going to write him off after 1 year, but we can't rule out the fact that he's just not quite as good as people hoped that he would be. And then, as much as I like Luther Burden, he missed almost all of OTAs and training camp due to injury, and so he's behind the eight ball in this system where Ben Johnson expects the highest level of precision and attention to detail. Currently, Olamide Zaccheaus is ahead of him on the depth chart, and while I don't expect that to last very long into the season, I think that it gives there a runway for Colston Loveland to start the season, who is currently the tight end one on the depth chart ahead of the 5-year vet and Cole Kmet at tight end. So he's been there. He's ready to go. I don't think he's necessarily going to follow exactly in Sam Laporta's footsteps and be the tight end one, but I think I wouldn't be shocked if he finishes the tight end 4 behind that elite top 3. So yeah, 10th round prices, tight end 9. I don't see why you wouldn't take the upside swing.
Nah, he's one of those guys that this might be my first time ever mentioning this on channel. I don't know, but I love to do 2 tight end builds for my teams where
Are
I'll pick
you?
a, huh?
You're joking, right?
I don't know if I mentioned it, but
We've
I like
talked about it so many times.
I like to take an elite tight end, but then I'll also take a guy who I'll take a shot on who I think can be elite, especially towards later in the season, maybe even early on. But I think Colston Loveland and even Tyler Warren this year, they're both primed for that position this year. I think, thinking these guys aren't going to get involved early anymore is a sort of archaic way of thinking nowadays. And like you said, Colston Loveland is up there. I think the only thing in my mind this offseason that was going to keep him from being the tight end 1 for this team on the depth chart was if he was going to be a strong enough blocker at the NFL level. And he's proven that he can hold his own up there too, just like he could in Michigan. He was a very strong blocker in college, and he still is here. That's what you need to be able to do at the tight end position if you want to be on the field a lot. And I think with that being said, he's going to be on the field a lot. I don't think Luther Burden's going to be out there a lot till, later in the season because, like you said, him missing as much time as he did, it had an effect because you could see there were plays out there where he was a little bit lost as to like where he should be, who he should be blocking, where he should be lining up at. But things like that will clean up as the season goes along. He gets to watch more film. He'll figure it out. But at the time, I think that gives Colston Loveland an opportunity to really solidify himself as that second or third option for this team.
Or first.
Or first. He could be the first option for this team also. That is true.
Let's dream big, bro. But I gotta mention this. You asked if this was the first time you had brought that up on the channel. I have a note that I didn't get to in here that says, and to take a page out of Will's book, we should maybe pair him with another tight end. For me, because I didn't get to it. I don't personally love to do the elite tight end with another one, although I get it. I think that is viable, and it's definitely worked for you in the past. I've seen it. But I think taking Colston Loveland and then pairing him with another dart throw kind of late round tight end, or even a guy that's like ranked a little bit ahead of him, like an Andrews or an Njoku, I think that's a pretty good strategy that I might employ this year.
That's probably the better way to put it. So I think that's actually closer to what I did. Because last year I took a swing on Kyle Pitts, but then I also took a swing on Brock Bowers. And obviously that's how that played out the way it did. But I think that's probably a better way to look at it than that. Not an elite tight end. So like don't go taking like George Kittle and then trying to take one. But I feel like that's still a decent setup anyways. I don't know.
Yeah, it could work out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that will do it. That's our 6 players that you cannot leave your drafts without. We appreciate you if you stuck with us all the way until the end. If you gained something from the video, if you enjoyed, please do leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you stay up to date with all of our latest releases, and drop any players that you really like, players that you think are must drafts in the comments below. Will, you got anything to tell the people before we head out of here?
Nah, man. Good luck with your drafts. Best of luck this season because it's getting to be crunch time now. Best of luck to everybody out there. Not too much to the people in my league at all.
Boo to them. Agreed. But yeah, let's get it out of here. Appreciate y'all as always, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.
Peace.